Welcome to the Learn Tourism Talks webinar. My name is Sarah Benoit. I'm the lead instructor, and I'm so glad to have everyone here today. If you don't know me, I host these webinars every month, usually once a month, sometimes twice, depending on how exciting the industry is and what's going on. I know things are moving fast these days. We will be having a great conversation today with our guest, Tim Flohr, who I'm really excited to have with us. And on Friday, you'll receive a copy of this recording and any other supportive materials that get discussed today. So you can definitely expect that in your inbox by Friday. It usually takes me just a day to process the recording. After that, I want to encourage you to share this information with the rest of the world. So if you think our conversation is something other people can benefit from, then please feel free to take that link and send it out. And I'll also include in that follow-up email a link to our YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is where I database all of our webinars. I have been doing these webinars even before I was with Learn Tourism. So I've been doing them since 2015, and there is a lot of great information up there. So I'll share that link with everyone. If you ever want more information about tourism and hospitality, and especially digital marketing and technology, that's where we have our entire content library hosted. But again, I'm really excited today to welcome our guest speaker, Tim Flohr. He is here with us from the University of Memphis and has a long history and career in hospitality and tourism. And I'm most excited today to actually not just be a part of this conversation, but to actually learn, because I feel like this industry is moving faster than ever before. I feel like there's so many different changes going on. As somebody who's a bit of an information junkie and a techno obsessed person, I've been really interested in how the technology is impacting careers on this level. So I'm really excited to have you here today, Tim. And I wanted you to kick things off just by sharing a little bit about your background and the current work that you do in hospitality, education, and workforce development.
Perfect. First of all, thank you for having me, Sarah. It's wonderful to be here. And thanks to all the people joining. I see quite a diverse group of attendees here from all across the globe. That's really exciting. So my background, I've been in the hospitality industry since the age of 15. And much like you, Sarah, I started as a dishwasher as a 15-year-old in Omaha, Nebraska. Worked my way through the industry, graduated from the University of Delaware's hotel, restaurant, and institutional management program. And that helped open up some doors for me in managing hotels and restaurants, both in the Mid-Atlantic region of the United States, Maryland, Delaware beaches, resort areas, and also took me up to New York City, where I worked for about 7 years with Aramark and also some other companies running corporate dining services there. And then I transitioned to academia in 2011 at Drexel University in Philadelphia. As my first opportunity there, I was director of operations in their culinary arts program and got my first crack at teaching there. So I was an adjunct instructor there, and that was eye-opening for me. I was able to take a lot of the things that I did in industry in mentoring, teaching, and brought that into the classroom, which I never thought I would be a professor ever. I think anybody knowing me in my undergraduate days, if you would have bet me $1 million I'd be a professor, I would have probably taken you up on that bet. But the dean that hired me at Drexel University later came to the University of Memphis the following year. And one thing led to another, and he lured us out to Memphis, Tennessee. And I've been here since 2016. My start was as the internship coordinator in our program. So I was working with a lot of companies and, both locally in Memphis, regionally, and also internationally for internship opportunities for our students. And oversaw the professional development program and helping to get the students ready for their careers. And probably about 3.5 years ago at one of our academic conferences, I was talking with several professors and career services specialists from across the U.S. And everyone had the same problem, what we were trying to address, which is that disconnect between industry and academia. We got together and launched what was then hospitality internships, which launched in 2023. And the goal with that was to help connect students with internship programs, management training opportunities, and entry-level management positions across the globe. So that took off quickly. And over 2 years, we had some great partnerships that came from them, with American Hotel Lodging Association, National Restaurant Association, several state hotel and restaurant associations. And then excuse me. From there, we saw that we had another need there. We had static job board for all those career opportunities. And then we had all of our networking taking place outside of that on LinkedIn and some of our other social media platforms. And so we made a conscious decision to bring that all together into what is now the Hospitality Nexus. So the Nexus is a community platform bringing together not only students, but also current industry professionals, industry, academia, vendors onto the platform. And as a way to help not only for them to find career opportunities, but also upskilling and like certifications and continuing education, like we'll be talking about today. So that brings us to where we are. I've been working with you and Stephen from Learn Tourism, and as well as quite a few others from across the globe, and really excited to be here and talk about this much needed topic, so important in our industry.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. First, I just want to say I love that there's somebody else out there who's an accidental educator. I also never in 1,000 years thought I would be a teacher, but I taught myself everything about technology in the early 2000s and then discovered because of that process of self-learning, I was really good at explaining it to other people without all the jargon. So it's like that accidental kickoff to my career. I'm so delighted that it worked out that way because I never would have expected it. I do want to share the results of the poll really quick with everyone, just so you can see 81% of everybody here feels like, yes, workforce development is really important to wherever they are. About 19% are not sure. So I want to encourage folks today, if you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A that's available. I'll also be monitoring the chat. So don't hesitate throughout my conversation with Tim to drop in questions, especially if this topic is new to you. And then just looking at the issues that people's regions or cities or towns are facing. Again, the number one issue, not enough people in the talent pipeline. The next one, lack of education about tourism and hospitality careers. And then we look at lack of interest in tourism and hospitality careers, which I think goes alongside of that lack of education. The lack of continuing education and opportunities for growth. So people seeing if they start one place, they could go to another place. I think that's actually something that's often misunderstood about our industry. And then, of course, there's lots of other stuff, a lack of local leadership, a lack of career perks, high pay, good benefits, things like that. I think one thing that was added by Liddell to the chat was a lack of workforce housing. Wow, really big issue. Thank you for mentioning that because I didn't put it in the poll. And I will just say, I'm going to launch into this next question, but I wanted to look at the poll and frame this in one way, which is, even though we're going to talk about some bigger picture stuff, if you have specific questions today around your region or your area, please let us know, because the truth is we know there's a bigger picture of the tourism and hospitality industry. And then there's each individual location, destination, what we're going through. I live in Asheville, North Carolina. As you all know, a little over a year ago, we had a pretty intense natural disaster. We are still in recovery from that disaster. We are still cleaning up that disaster. And our workforce has been deeply impacted by that disaster. We have lost some of our best people due to that. So there's always things in your own area that are specific to you. And I don't want to take away from that. But the question I wanted to start with, Tim, is really from your perspective, what is the current state of workforce development today? I was looking at the Bureau of Labor Statistics and all of that just to see what they say. But what are you hearing from your colleagues and the people in the industry about where are we at? How are we feeling? What's going on?
We're all looking at the same statistics, and the statistics you see are we have about 17 million strong in the industry today, which is right around where the pre-COVID numbers were in 2020, but which is a great thing. But we're seeing, and when you break that down by sector, we're seeing a lot of issues and talent shortages, specifically in the hotel and lodging industry. We're short 600, I think it's 600 to 700,000 jobs in hotels alone. And some of the other sectors have bounced back a little bit stronger, and tourism and food and beverage restaurants, they're all seem to be going strong, even though we're seeing a lot of restaurants shutting down and downsizing, but still that sector of the industry is pretty strong. So I think where we're at now is just what we're all talking about today is the workforce development and how to connect that talent with great career opportunities. And where do we find the talent? Some of the answers we had in that poll are the talent's not out there. But, I think as we talk today, as we talk through that, I think the talent is there. We just need to find a better way of connecting them with the opportunities in the industry.
Yeah, and I'll just echo that. I often feel like one of the biggest issues is understanding, like for a hotel, what kind of talent do you need? I understand that because I worked in hotels early in my career. But I think if you've never had that job before, you don't even know if you have the right skills or talent for it because it's just not always talked about in that way. Right. So I think there's lots of different specific jobs inside of tourism and hospitality where there's actually a ton of people that I think have the skills and the talent needed, but they may not even self identify that they would be a good fit for that industry. I certainly, nobody told me to go be in that industry and that it would take me anywhere. Basically, they
Mhm.
were like, oh, this guy will hire a 15-year-old, like that's how I got my first job. So, in sort of that spirit, when it comes to talent, what is it that people are actually looking for? What do you think the skills are that are missing from the industry right now? And is there, any sort of gaps in training or gaps in the conversation, like I'm talking about? How do we kind of bring together, like you said, the industry with academia and students and help them bridge that understanding of, hey, if you like this stuff, this would be a great career to consider or go after? Or what are you hearing from restaurants and hotels and other types of employers is like the talent they're not finding?
That is it's such a multifaceted issue here. And one of the things we look at the bridge about the gap between industry and academia, but there's also bridges, there's gaps within the industry and within academia themselves. They're both going through huge changes. So we're trying to connect two different entities that at many times are miles apart. And they're all going through their changes, which are the things that we're trying to overcome. And we're trying to overcome a lot of different issues right now. With that being said, going back to what you said earlier about being an accidental educator, the same thing applies to our industry and the views that many have about our industry. Many fell into hospitality. They started like you and I and many others, starting in a pizza shop or washing dishes at the age of 15. Next thing you know, you're in college, maybe bartending, waiting tables, and then we end up in the industry. It's not one of those industries that a lot of people, maybe when they're younger, are thinking about, but the career opportunities there are vast, they're massive. I mean, one of the few industries with low barriers to entry where you can get in and work your way up and own your own place without having to even go to college. I've seen it many, many times. We're fighting that battle in academia, at least, and having parents who are looking to send their children to college. And when students are like, I want to study hospitality, they're giving them a side eye, like, is that really what you want to do? So changing that perception of our industry, number one, is big. And then we get into and I think the skills gap is a completely different topic, and which we'll talk about as well. But I think at first it's just reframing what our industry is and the perceptions of
Yeah. No, I really agree with that because I think when it comes to hospitality, people don't realize there's so many different types of people that can do well
it.
there because you've got front of the house, you've got back of the house, you've got things that put you like in the public eye, but you've got a ton of other supporting roles that don't necessarily put you in the public eye. And so there's just like so much to explore there that I think it's when we talk about skill gaps, training challenges, and things like that, or just like how do we get people to understand what kind of talent we want to bring in? I think there's
Mhm.
just like you said, we have to get to that initial starting point, which is, hey, this industry is offering a lot of different things for people. So yeah, the next question I want to talk about is when it comes to we're going to talk about reimagining the workforce. When you're setting new goals for workforce development, hmm, destinations, even businesses themselves are thinking about how they're going to train people or recruit people. What are you hearing any trends there around recruitment and what's happening, what people are focused on?
Well, first off, with universities, I'll start with that point, having being in that sector or being that in that world right now. But in hospitality, tourism, and culinary arts schools across the globe, we need to have it where industry has a bigger voice in the curriculum and working with universities and community colleges, even high school dual enrollment programs across the United States and across the globe. And not just being a member of an advisory board, but actually being involved and making sure that schools know what the expectations are when students get out of school. That's, I think, one part of it. And schools actually making experiential learning a serious part of their program, where internships, externships, and what we'll be talking about today as well is apprenticeship programs, registered apprenticeship programs for the American Hotel Lodging Association's foundation and the National Restaurant Association's Educational Foundation are really starting to blow up around the United States. And it's a model that we take from Europe and it's working very well over there, and where people can just enter the industry working with these companies as an apprentice. And they're 2-year programs, which are totally free, by the way, for hotels and restaurants to be a part of. So, there are contacts. I can send that information to you and who to reach out to at AHLA and the National Restaurant Association. But there's more than one pathway to get into the industry and to find talent. So starting with hospitality, tourism, and culinary arts school, it's being involved. It's offering great, and not only being involved with letting faculty and administrators know what the expectations are, because there needs to be that alignment of what skills are needed and what these students are coming out with as a skill set. They need to be able to hit the ground running. They need to be battle tested and be able to make an impact from day one on the job. So it's partly that. It's partly having structured internship programs, which takes both the universities and colleges having structured their internships as well as organizations. So I think between that and registered apprenticeship program, there's multiple pathways in which someone can enter the industry and thrive.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you bringing that up, because one of the things, I often talk to people who will say, I just want to get an intern. I'm going to go ask this professor if he's got a student. And I'm like, don't do that. I'm like,
Yeah.
most universities and colleges, there's actually a place you can go for career development, and they've already got a system for handling internships, and you want to plug into that system. I learned that with the University of North Carolina here. When you wanted to get internships here, it's so funny. We're such a small city. A lot of times people will be like, oh, I'm just going to ask this person if they have somebody, or we're going to go to the community college culinary program and say, hey, we want to get involved here. And I'm like, actually, just go look at the website of the university or college. They probably have some type of student career development system in place. What you want to do is plug into that so that you're now part of how they're engaging things. When you do that, I think it makes a big difference on the types of interns you can get and how fast it goes. It also helps you as a business become more organized and actually understand, what am I looking for? What am I offering? So that you're building an internship program internally, because that's the part that the university or college isn't going to do for you necessarily.
You're exactly right. You get the nail on the head, because when I was internship coordinator at the University of Memphis program, I would get a dozen calls a week for people looking for interns. And that, if you ask 100 different people what an internship is, you're going to get 100 different answers. There was really no structure behind it. So I had to actually create a handbook for both the program itself and putting academic rigor and making sure there was those expectations from the students. And I had to do the same thing for employers, because a lot of times they didn't have a structured internship program. So, companies like Disney and Marriott and Hilton, some of the bigger players there, they have outstanding internship programs, but some of the regional and local organizations do not. So we would first have to vet the employer and find out what exactly they're looking for. Some actually had a good internship program or the beginnings of one, and some were just basically looking for glorified line cooks and servers and needing help. And so that was, again, one of the reasons why we launched hospitality internships. And from that, we actually grew to where we created a CHIP program, which is a certified hospitality internship provider program, where we set global standards for what an internship is, basically 15 points of it has to be student centered and have learning objectives and feedback mechanisms built in and all of that. So, having an internship program is such a great way to find talent. That's your pipeline right there. You interview once and you hire twice, basically. The 72% of internships, if it works out well, turns into a job opening for that student in a position in the future. So it's a great way to test the talent and build your pipeline right there.
Yeah. And I just want to add for everybody too, one of the things I think, is, and I've worked with a lot of small to medium sized businesses, right? In Asheville, we have a big independent restaurant association. We've got even hotels here that are owned locally that are smaller. And a lot of times their argument was like, we're looking for interns because we need help. We don't have time. But to your point, I'm like, if you plan this right and you actually put some thought into what you're trying to do by having interns in your location, you're going to solve a bunch of different problems. One, they're going to work out better. Two, you're going to attract the right interns. You're going to attract people because you were intentional about what you wanted. And then three, most of all, you're going to potentially create a pipeline for yourself, because you're going to realize, if I did a good job of hiring this intern, when they're ready to come into the workforce, if I've built a good relationship and they're a good fit, I might get to keep them. So that sort of upfront work you do to prepare, I think, is really important for everybody. And I often encourage people, I'm like, don't skip that part of it. Really be intentional. Would you go hire anybody else with literally no intention? Just grab somebody off the street and throw them in your team. You wouldn't do that. So I think we need to maybe not think of internships as that anymore, but as like a real working relationship we're going to have with people. I'm curious to know too, when it comes to internships with younger folks, do you feel like there's specific things that you're seeing that are motivating those younger people, whether they're already in a program or they're considering what they're doing, that's what's hooking them into the industry? Or even people who are like changing their careers? Because a lot of people come into the industry later in life just by switching their career, going back to school. What do you think motivates them to get involved in the internship programs or to say yes to that stuff?
I think people want purpose. People want a pathway. They want to see that there's a roadmap, a clear roadmap for them to be able to succeed with that organization. So, and that goes from the beginnings of the internship program all the way through the, interviews and onboarding and everything else that you're doing with that intern, is making them feel and know what your culture is all about. I mean, you said it before, if you have a quality internship program, you have somebody ready to hire right there if it's a good fit. And also, students talk programs. We see great internship providers and know that there's people who are investing in our students. Those are people who actually care and are doing something about making that change, making that difference. And not everyone, Disney college program is outstanding, phenomenal. When you're there, they have a lot of different, not only housing, which was one of the points that was brought up earlier, but education, ongoing education with interns while they're there. And so they're doing a lot of the things right. And those are things, you don't have to be Disney to do that at a local level. You just need to make an investment in time, resources, and providing a structured, clear pathway for everyone. I think that's one of the main things they want. And just treating them like human beings and not like number. And just interns aren't just there to break down boxes and wash dishes. They're there for you to train and work with and help grow. And if companies are doing that, they're going to get a return tenfold from that, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's so important, because sometimes people do forget internships are for learning. That's literally what they're for. They're so somebody can learn and then be more prepared for the next step. You not only teach them, prepare them for the next step, but then show them what that next step could be. I think you're creating an entirely different experience. And again, it's once you create that structure, you can use that structure every semester. You can use that structure every year. It's not like you're going to have to recreate it every time. It's just a matter of being intentional in the beginning.
Exactly.
So just moving on a little bit to thinking about like the internships themselves and even any types of training and kind of talent recruitment, when it comes to building those learning opportunities, whether it's internships or it's just some type of entryway into your, like, again, we want to give people the chance to move up a lot. So we might bring somebody in at one position with the idea that they go to another position. Are there any sort of like educational approaches or hands-on learning approaches that you're seeing are new or ones that are really working for folks? Because I think one thing that makes hospitality so unique is you have to have real world experience to get somebody, no matter what the job is. It's really time in action makes a difference in how skilled you are, not just the learning you do if you go to school. So what's happening in that education space around folks in this industry? Is it changing at all? Is it still super old school and the same it's been for 20 years? Or what are you seeing in kind of the education space?
It depends. I mean, some schools and colleges and universities are more advanced than others, of course, and are better at integrating career services, like you talked about earlier, into this. Because you got to think of it's like a whole ecosystem. So, it's about taking students when they're coming in at 18, and we think of it a lot like it's 18 to 22, but in actuality, we have a lot of career changers, non-traditional students coming into programs. So it's across the board, but think of it this way: we have 4 years basically in which to help train it as much as we can so they can come out on the other side and have a great job. And that's a whole lot to put in on anyone to be able to do that. So what we really try to do is just make sure it's not as a transactional, where you come and get a degree, boom, you're out. It should be lifelong partnership there. And there's plenty of opportunities for schools to have bachelor's, have continuing education like we do at the University of Memphis, Flohr International, a lot of the great schools have, they have great partnerships with industry to be able to provide that ongoing training, not just for bachelor students and master students, but anybody from the industry. I think that's the type of connections we need. But going back to what you said earlier, there's students have to know the hands-on. They have to, this is not a theory-based industry that we're getting into. So we think that's important for not only practicums while they're in school. Like at our school, they work in a hotel, they work in a restaurant, they're actually doing the work. Not that they're going to be doing it for their whole career, but they have to know that. They have to know how to check in a guest, how to make a bed, so if they ever have to roll up their sleeves, which they're many times going to have to do, they have to know that stuff. It not only builds empathy for the people who are doing that work, but also you can't train and teach somebody something if you don't know how to do it yourself. I think that's one of the things, and to go back to your question, Noah, but different trends we're seeing is more project-based learning in internships. So students aren't just being hired to wash dishes, serve, bartend, anything like that. They're actually giving them a project for that 10, 12, 15 weeks. And basically 4 or 5 different learning objectives, a project that they're working on. So at the end of that, they can show what they did, project outcomes, and everything, all the skills and knowledge that they learned in that time. I'm seeing that a lot more in my program and programs from across the country.
Yeah, I think that's awesome because I will say I'm one of those people who I didn't go to college for anything related to anything that I do for a living. I studied biblical literature, which has nothing to do with anything that I've ever done. And I think it's important, like, not just to think about what you're saying when it comes to the academia, but also that I think what we're going to see going forward is a few different things trend wise. And I think we're going to see building a culture of learning overall. That's actually going to matter to every industry in this country. It already does. But by next year, y'all, we really have to make learning the center of what we're doing. That means we can't all be perfect because sometimes we're learning stuff. So we have to change, I think, business culture in general to give people more space to be in that learning mindset, because I think technology is going to impact us at such a big level across the board that we're all going to feel like, what? I don't know everything anymore. Right? Even if I've been in my career a long time, I don't know everything. I think that's going to open the door to a lot of, like you said, more project-based work, not just for students, but again, when you're moving people through your pipeline, you want them to be promoted to the next level. You might have to do internal training on that level and internal education to prepare them for that next step. I also think there's going to be some great opportunities just for peer-to-peer learning. So really matching up people that work in your business or your brand or your destination and saying, hey, these people who are already familiar with these skills are going to help upskill these people. And I think that's going to open the door to happen in a lot of different ways. I think I work in a lot of online learning programs. I think there's going to be a mix of people meeting in person, people doing stuff online, just so we can capitalize on the talent we already have and sort of continue to help them see, rather than thinking of it as, we hired you, you're in this job, you'll figure out what you're going to do. I think we want to maybe start taking a little more initiative to say, hey, we'll help you, train up, upskill, go to the next level, learn something new that'll help you do better in your job, and building that more into the experience, right, of having a job. And again, I think this is actually going to happen across the board because I think the tech is going to just shift a lot of the ways that we're doing things and a lot of the ways that our guests and visitors behave. So we're going to have that learning curve there. And I think that's going to also open the door to, like you said, even more partnerships between the academic world and the tourism and hospitality industry to think about how they partner. Because there are some destinations out there doing amazing partnerships. I was at Destinations International's conference and sat in on a whole panel about this. And it was really cool listening to different destinations talk about the relationships they built with the universities and colleges and community colleges, culinary programs, just to make it really exciting and helpful to the students and also helpful to the businesses that needed support. I just think we want to be creative and open-minded, that there's new ways of doing this stuff that we want to kind of approach.
If I could add on to that for a second,
Yeah.
we are right now, I think, in more of employers are putting skills first and not a degree first mentality. And they probably would boot me out of academia for saying this, but not every person needs a college degree by any stretch of the imagination, especially in our industry where you can enter, there's no barriers to entry to getting into the hospitality industry. There may be barriers to growth in the future from not having a bachelor's degree, but in many cases, if you're working with good companies and getting in through either just going and learning on the job or going in through an apprenticeship program, a lot of these companies will pay for your education in the future. And we have to be extremely creative right now because we're coming up, or we're in the beginning of what they're calling this a rolling cliff, where in 2007, they're beginning then when we peaked, we've been declining the number of births in the United States for almost a decade. So there's less students enrolling in colleges and universities now. And universities are starting to see that. They need to be creative in how we're not only attracting students, but how we're preparing them for industry. I tell my students all the time, you need to do more with less, a lot more with a lot less. We have a workforce that, you're going to need to be involved with. You're going to need to pay hands-on, and you're going to need to know the accounting, the human resources, the law and ethics and finance, all those pieces. You have to know a lot more. And that's where a lot of these stackable certifications and skills come in from so many different providers, HLEI, Learn Tourism, certain guest service partners like Cockerell Academy and some of the great ones out there, where you're not just getting your education from a university and college anymore. So we really need to be, creative in how we approach this moving forward.
Yeah, I'll say up until the hurricane last year, in my previous life, at my other company that I owned for 14 years, I had a relationship with our community college, and they brought me in every semester to teach online to hospitality students about digital marketing and technology. And what I always loved about that program is when we would start, all the students would be like, why do I have to learn this? Marketing has nothing. I'm a chef. Marketing has nothing to do with this. I'm going to be doing this part of the job. I'm not going to do marketing. And usually by the end of my 8 weeks with them, because I was the one interacting with them in the online classroom, they would present to me what they'd learned in project and say, this is where I think these skills are going to help me. And my most favorite thing was that 100% of those students understood at the end, marketing is going to matter to you no matter which part of this job you're in. Because even if you are a chef, you are going to need to have your own personal brand and understand what you represent. If you want to start your own restaurant, you're going to have this business knowledge. If you want to move up in a hotel and you've been working the front desk, which is what I did years ago, you learn a lot in that front desk position about the customers, about the people, about what they want, what they need. You actually learn some things in that job that the marketing people in an office will never know because they didn't talk to those guests firsthand. So how can you leverage that to make that next leap up to a type of job? And I was always excited that people discovered oh, this does matter. And I'm like, it does. And so I think you're right. What we're seeing across the board, like I said, and it's not just this industry, but lots of industries, is the amount of skills that you can cultivate, the amount of direction you can go. There's actually more options than there were before, but it's we need people to be aware of those options. So it's as business owners or leaders or executives or people who are in HR hiring, we actually need to know that stuff so we can share it with the people that we're bringing into the mix. And then, like you said, position them in a different space. And I want to remind everybody as we're coming to the last 10 minutes, if you have specific workforce questions that you'd like to ask us today, while we have Tim here, I want to encourage you to do that. You can pop it in the chat or leave it in the Q&A, and I will definitely look it up there. But I want to wrap up on the conversation around, we have a lot of destinations, convention and visitor bureaus, chambers, counties, cities that are on the call today. They are obviously, I think many of them are already interested in working with their local academic institutions to figure out how they build up talent and a pipeline for the industry. Again, you have sort of a bigger picture. You talk to lots of different people. And I know this is a big question again. What advice do you have for the folks in that realm? How can they start a relationship if they don't have one? Or a lot of times in this world, what we're allowed to do is controlled by the government, by our region, by our city, county, and especially we're accountable to the community because a lot of the money that gets spent on destinations and developing different things is coming directly from the community that you live. So what are your thoughts on just how they can make a step forward, advance something, or even begin the conversation to try to create some of these stronger ways of activating talent and bringing them in the door?
That's a great question. And I think with anything, it's not working in silos. It's making sure that we're branching out, making sure that we're not only focused on what we're doing within our own specific local areas. I know, for example, here in Memphis, our Memphis tourism team does a phenomenal job, and they come into the university and they had this Welcome to Memphis program where they would actually teach they teach the line level workers in and around Memphis everything about what to see in Memphis. So when people come and they're at a bar or a restaurant downtown and somebody asks them, where would you go for, what are some great places to go? And they would say, Graceland and Beale Street and National Civil Rights Museum and all those. But a lot of these servers in themselves and people were never actually there. They've never seen it, so they couldn't talk about it. So they gave them a welcome to Memphis card. They said for free admission, so you can go see these things and talk to people about it and grow tourism with your own area. That's just one piece of it where it's like educating the current staff and people in your region. But you're in perfect positions now with hundreds of hotels and restaurants that are within your network to leverage that and start working with these community colleges, universities, help get in touch with the AHLA and National Restaurant Association about these apprenticeship programs. And if you haven't heard about them or reached out as of now, you're going to learn. You're going to start seeing a lot more of that because they're 2-year programs. They provide all the supplemental education, a lot of the framework for these companies, and it's free. And those in and of itself help give people a path for, they get, after 2 years, they're basically go through a restaurant management curriculum, not involved with the university at all, but that's just a different pathway in. And get involved with your universities. Make sure you are helping connect those employers who are members of your DMO or CVB with those colleges. And we have to just raise the bar. I always say a lot of people like to complain about the workforce, but very few people are stepping up to do anything about it. So be one of those, be that agent of change and work with those colleges and say, you know what, we'll work with you. We want to take students and help give them that real world experience and provide them with that structure. But let's work together on this because schools and colleges and universities are struggling on their own trying to do this. So somebody really has to step up and help make those connections, which I think puts CVBs in a great position to be able to do that.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that because I definitely think destinations and CVBs and everyone who's working in like the promotion of a destination, the stewardship of a destination, I think one of the things that we have is a view on what businesses are in our region, who those owners are, what their stories are, because we do a lot to tell their stories. And so a lot of times you can help the university or college, if they don't have a great program, to come to them and say, hey, we have these great people in our community that want to talk about their careers. You have a great program. Can we position some of these people to come and talk to your students? How can we plug into different things? Like we become that bridge in so many circumstances. And I think that that's a role that we can play. And if there's already something great happening in your community, I want to encourage you, don't reinvent the wheel. Go learn about what's happening and then figure out how you can become a supporter of that and a partner of that. Because a lot of times, again, when you're in silos, you'll be like, we have this great idea, we're going to start it. And then the other people are like, we already started this. Why are you competing with this thing we worked on for 2 years? And it's like, yeah, we didn't need to do that. We could have just combined forces. And I will just say, I love what you just said, because most people who are used to my webinars know every once in a while I get real talk about things. One of the things that I've struggled with working with small business over the years is that narrative around the workforce. And even some of my closest friends, I've owned a business for over 20 years here in Asheville. And many times I've been sitting with business owners and they're saying to me, the workforce this and the workforce that, they don't want this and they don't want it. And I've been like, I'd really like you to just take a breath, because I don't think you are going to get great talent if you're out in the community talking about how people in this industry are lazy and don't want a job. Honestly, I've lived here for 25 years. There's nobody in this town. Might be like one tiny percentage of people that actually don't want a job. But most people in this town want a job and they want upward mobility because they want to keep living here. And so that narrative got really strong after the pandemic. And I felt like we really had to like have these honest conversations where I was like, we can't be out on social media talking negative about the workforce and then be mad that we don't have anybody applying for our job.
Right.
It's like you don't realize it's a disconnect, but I tried to be understanding too. They were under stress. I'm a small business owner. I get it, but like really not falling into the blame game is important, because I think really there's a lot of people on planet Earth and most of them would like to be able to take care of themselves and work a job and do well. So if you can focus your energy on that, then you're going to build a structure and a system that attracts really great people.
I agree. And you said the real world talk, and I actually scale back. Generally, what I say is everyone likes to bitch and complain about the workforce. Very few people step up and say, you know what, we're going to institute change here. We're going to treat people right, provide them with a pathway, because, if you're not doing that, they're going to find somebody who will. Every single person on earth has a phone, and in about 0.3 seconds, they can find other jobs and opportunities around where you're at. If you don't engage them and help provide that for them, they'll find somebody who will. And that's one of the reasons why we have unprecedented turnover in many frontline positions across the United States. It's because we're failing to do that. We're failing to step in, do the right thing, take care of people, and make investments in those people who are working with us.
Yeah, totally. And I want to say too, to those of you who are from small towns, small cities, rural America, I realize sometimes there's not a lot of resources and people to do what Tim and I are talking about. But I do want to say that it's really about figuring out, again, making those connections, having those conversations, figuring out the real value in building up the tourism and hospitality industry, really being honest about what you can and can't do, and just actually committing to the longer process, I think, is the point I'm trying to make, right? That it isn't going to happen overnight. There's not going to be like a one size fits all answer. It's going to be more about, connecting in with those folks. And hey, Stephen, we're about to wrap up, but I see you hopping in.
I wanted to just check in and say hello to everybody who's here. Say hi to Tim. Nice to see you.
Yeah, you doing it.
I'm living the dream. Living the dream. And I just wanted to remind everybody that we look forward to seeing you all at the Learn Tourism Conference, which is coming up in March. I'm sure Sarah has already mentioned it. And as the CEO here at Learn Tourism, we are passionate about learning. And I think that's one thing that we share with the students and participants and people entering the workforce, and most importantly, with the travelers themselves. So I want to just thank everybody for participating today. And Sarah, I'm out of your hair. I'm out of my own hair too, by the way. I ran out of that years ago.
Thank you for hopping in as always. I always appreciate you coming in and saying hi. And yeah, so we're wrapping up right now. I really appreciate everybody being here. I want to give Tim 1 minute and I know it's 1 minute, but if you were looking ahead to next year, what's the biggest change you think we're going to see? Is there one thing where you're like, ooh, this change is going to be big, or this is a development people should be looking out for?
In addition to everything I just said, it's what we're doing, actually in partnership with you and Stephen at Learn Tourism, is with the Hospitality Nexus. And we are having our official launch, our Nexus Summit, on February 9th through the 19th. And the Nexus is where the hospitality industry is coming together. Industry, academia, vendors, students, everyone's coming together. For those of you who have CVBs or DMOs, reach out to me. We can love to set you up with a space on the site so you can help promote your organizations and those that are members with you. We are all about providing resources, trainings like with Learn Tourism and many others, and upskilling our workforce. So that's what we're passionate about, not only for students in academia currently, but for everyone in the workforce. And that includes even people who've been working in the industry a while. There's a lot of changes going on all the time. It's tough keeping up with everything that's going on, especially in technology. Tech has changed from the time we started this webinar today. We have new things coming out. So it's impossible to keep up with that. I urge all of you to join the Hospitality Nexus, and I'd love to be a resource for you moving forward. If there's anything I can do to help, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Tim. I really appreciate it. Like I said, I came here today not just to host this, but to also learn, because I want to see our industry flourish. It's an industry that brought me most of the good things in my life. And so I highly support folks checking out Hospitality Nexus. When I send you the recording, I will also share that link and some other information about Tim so that you can reach out to him. Thanks for dropping that in there, Stephen. And as Stephen said, please join us at the Learn Tourism Conference March 9th and 10th in Richmond, Virginia. You'll get some information about that as well. I would love to have some folks come and learn with me in person. And we're going to cover all sorts of different topics related to tourism and hospitality. But thank you all again for joining us today. I look forward to seeing you at another Learn Tourism Talks webinar, and have a great rest of your week. And thanks for dropping your email in there, Tim.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.